Welcome to Bold Voices, Soft Hearts, a podcast featuring stories of finding passion through pain. We're so glad you're joining us. Here's our episode for the day.
Hello and welcome back to Bold Voices, Soft Hearts. I'm Misty Snyder, your host, and I am excited to be back with you today. If you haven't heard, my book, Happiness is Down Syndrome, is available for pre-order on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and many other local and national bookstores. You can visit those sites I just mentioned, or you can take a peek at my website, mistycoysnyder.com, to pre-order your copy. There's something in it for everyone, from learning to cope with a new diagnosis, how to support a friend or family member going through it, finding resources, combating ableism, busting myths, and so much more. So I truly hope you'll check it out. So if you've been listening to my show since the beginning, I want to harken back to season 1, episode 2, where I interviewed a dear friend named Cathy Daub. At the time, her nonprofit, Team Iron Will, was in its baby stages, and now it's really taken off. It was inspired by her son, William, with Down syndrome. He was also born in 2020, like my son, Jedediah. Cathy and her husband, Andrew, and their entire family and crew hopes to provide resources for the Down syndrome community. And that includes material assistance, medical, therapeutic, and adaptive equipment, care packages, and developmental and educational tools to families in the Down syndrome community. They also provide educational opportunities through webinars and connections, and medical advocacy by finding healthcare professionals who genuinely respect and uphold the dignity and value of each individual with Down syndrome. I am so proud to partner often with this incredible organization with my friends, and I'm thrilled to have Cathy on the show again and to talk about a topic that is near and dear to our hearts that we often circle back to. Hey, Cathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Misty. It's good to be back.
I know, you're back. It's so cool.
Yeah.
You were here like exactly 3 seasons ago.
I know. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So as I was saying in my intro, I feel like you and I have the best conversations, like the really hard conversations, because we're a safe space. So we can kind of tackle things that can be kind of on the line of like, ooh, this could go awry, but we're a safe space.
Right. Yeah. And we're growing, right? We're both open to growth and to shifting our perspective if we need to.
Yeah.
And things change, right? As our kids get older, it's like your perspective does change, and it should. It should, because you're in a new season. So
for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I think so. Just to give the listeners background. So a few weeks ago, what sort of sparked the idea for this conversation, a few weeks ago, Jed had his IEP, and his therapist and his teachers told me, okay, we tested this and we did this and we checked this and we assessed Jed is ready for first grade. And my jaw sort of dropped to the floor, and I was like, no, I don't think I said, no, he's not. But I was like, how can that be? And they explained, well, you know, this and this and this. And I said, well, what about this and this and this? And they said, well, you know, we have this support in place, and we've got the one-on-one, and we're gonna adjust to his needs, and he's gonna show us. We're going to go to his pace. We're not going to make him fit in our box. We're going to adjust to what his needs are. And, you know, all those sort of things that we say we want, like they were saying, right? And when I had this silver platter in front of me, I was like, no, I don't want, like, I just sort of panicked and I was crying, and I just was like, I don't think he's ready. I don't think he could do that. Like, and to this day, and Cathy and I talked about it the next day, but like to this day, I can't really identify exactly what it was, except that I think because I grew up not exposed to disability and not exposed to anyone like Jed, the idea of him being in a first grade class with typical peers, knowing what I know about Jed, where he has, minimal speaking language and not fully potty trained, and like the things that I know about Jed as a 5-year-old child, I'm saying, how can that be? Like, he's not ready. And so I, as his mother, as the person who knows and loves him and supports him the most, am limiting him. And I had to think to myself, what kind of mother am I am? And it was just like sort of like the shame cycle sort of happened. And so I really dialogued with Cathy about this. And so I would love to hear when I was talking to you about this, like some of the thoughts that might have come up in your mind as I was sharing this with you.
Yeah, so I think, if you remember, one of the things we talked about is that we fall into this trap, and I do it too. We all we all do it if we're being honest, is that we look at something like first grade and we go, okay, I know a first grader is supposed to be reading, they're supposed to be writing legible letters, they're supposed to be, doing basic math. And we go, okay, our kids aren't there yet. And we're thinking of it in the wrong light. Like we're thinking of it as almost like he has to be like a typical first grader, but he doesn't. And that's why we offer, that's why we want supports for our kids. I was just talking to somebody earlier today and telling them, we don't ever say Will can't do something unless of course it's dangerous or something
Right.
like that. But we don't ever say he can't do that. We ask the question instead, how do we modify this activity so that he can succeed? And I
Yeah.
think that's what your team is doing with Jed, right? Like, Jed's ready for first grade. He'll be bored out of his mind in kindergarten. They know that because they know him. And so they're looking at it and going, how do we modify things so that he can feel successful and be successful in the first grade? And because you and I didn't grow up like that, and I didn't have people with disabilities in my classrooms either, we've never seen that played out. And so it feels, it feels like, how could this possibly happen?
Yeah.
Like, how could he succeed at this level? So it's not that we don't believe in them at all. It's more of like, this is new. This
Yeah.
is totally new territory. But yeah, I get it. I get that feeling. And we do, I really think we all kind of do the same thing in different ways.
Yeah.
As much as we want to always presume competence, those little thoughts sneak in to your head and going, well, what if I'm wrong? What if he can't do that? What if, because the last thing any of us want is for our kids to feel like, to have their confidence crushed
Right.
and have them feel like I failed, or, have them recognize that they're not at the same level as someone else. Like that we're looking at it going, are they going to feel crushed? And the truth is they're probably not going to
Right.
feel crushed, because hopefully the team that has him, or the team that has Will, is not going to make him feel that way. That's the
Right.
goal, right? Is
Right.
to help them succeed at their level.
Well, and I think, and that's all so true. And I think a lot of it, when you really trace it back, when I really, kind of follow the line to where that ping is, where that sort of pang is, that is more about me and less
Right.
about Jed. When I've gone to birthday parties and Jed has gotten invited to his typical peers' kindergarten birthday parties, and they love him and they include him, but someone will make a comment about something about Jed, and they don't mean it in a mean way. They're kindergartners. They're commenting. It's stream of consciousness, right? But I hear it and I think, ooh, like that hurt. It hurts me. And so it becomes more about me and my pride and my sort of like unspoken expectations of exactly what you just said, what a kindergartner should be, what a first grader should be. It's all this should based on what we grew up with and what we knew to be. And so then we feel this like shame of, not shame of Jed, but what am I doing wrong as a parent? What could I be doing? What have I failed at? And that's where I really can go down a rabbit hole. And I think you and I, having worked with so many moms in our webinars and connecting in chats, just see that downward spiral. It can happen so easily, right? Like you think you're
And
good, and then all of a sudden you're like, I've failed my child, right?
yes, you're like, I didn't, do this thing early enough. I felt that way in the webinar that we hosted about potty training. I was like, how did I
Yeah.
get this far behind the power curve? But then I realized I know exactly what it was. And it is people setting low expectations. So the pediatrician told us when Will was like 2, oh, don't even think about
Yeah. Same.
potty training him right now. Just wait. And she
Yeah.
said, Will's going to do everything and double the time that your other kids did it. And even though in my head and in my heart, I don't believe that, I don't buy into that, that stuff gets stuck in your head. And so all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, we won't even start till
Yeah.
he's 4 or 5. And, because she said double the time. And I'm thinking, well, most of my kids weren't potty trained till they were 3.
Right.
So
So
let's
six,
double
7.
that.
Yeah.
That's 6. But that's the wrong way to think about it. And
Right.
you can't help that because
No.
we're getting this information, we're bombarded with it from the moment they are born. We are
Yes.
bombarded with like what they're not going to be able to do. And we all, like you and I, we push back against that all the time,
Yep.
but it doesn't mean that at times it doesn't trickle back in, or
Right.
it's not lodged back there somewhere in our memory where we're questioning, like, could he be potty trained at 3? I think he probably could have. Like
Right.
looking back hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I wish I had started earlier. We're just like you, we're on our way, we're doing well, he'll get
Right.
there. But I'm like, darn, why did I listen to that? Why did
Right.
I? But then I go, I can't beat myself up over
No,
that. You only know what you know,
you only
and we're
know.
all on this learning journey, and it doesn't matter how many 18-month-old children there are with Down syndrome who are already potty trained. Like, we're not comparing. we're
No.
not
And you can't go
we're not
back
going
in
to do that.
time. It doesn't do
No,
anyone any good. And
doesn't.
and that's the thing, is that finding that. But then I feel like you and I have talked about this pendulum of like, so you've got, um, okay, we're presuming competence, and we're saying, okay, we're going to say our kids can do that. We're going to set them up for success. We're going to just, assume the best, and okay, we can do this. But then we've also seen in our community, and I would say in the disability community as a whole, there's like this other side to it, almost like a look what they can do kind of thing. And some people have called it like inspiration porn, or like the people who are like the shining stars of the disability community, right? So if they can do it, my kid can do it. And I want like, I'm going to push for them to be as close to typical as they can be. And that sort of like very, very fine line of like, we want our child, and I love how this is a part of your mission statement, like to achieve their God-given, what is say the right
Right.
words for me, their
Their
God-given
God-given
potential.
potential. Yes.
That whatever that is for Will and whatever that is for Jed, those are two different things. We're not comparing. We're saying whatever that is for, and the same with our typical children. I'm not going to say that because your typical child is a great long jumper that my typical child needs to be too. Like
Right.
that's
And
jacked up,
yeah,
you
and
know?
it's funny how it comes into play. Like, it's so heightened in our community, in the disability community, in the Down syndrome community. Because you're right, like there are superstars in every community, and we cheer those people on. Like, I know, we have friends whose kids might be like just incredible at this thing or that thing, and my kids might be incredible at this thing or that thing. And what we want is for everybody to be able to cheer them on
Yeah.
and not go, oh, well, because you can throw a 90-mile-an-hour pitch, then little Bobby over here has to be able to do
Right.
that too. So we can't celebrate this guy over here because we don't
Right.
want him to feel bad.
Right.
We don't do that
No.
in the neurotypical world. But I get it. I get why we tend to do it in the world of Down syndrome and disability, because we were all fed the same thing, when our children were born. They can't, they can't, they can't. And so you're trying to combat that. And yeah, it really is. There is this fine line, right, between, presuming competence and accepting the God-given situation that you have,
Yep.
because there are children that have Down syndrome that might not walk till they're 4 or 5 or at all
Yep.
because of another medical condition that they have. And those children are just as valuable and
Yep.
should be just as celebrated. Like,
Yep.
I believe that with all of my heart, that it,
100%.
so but there ends up being this weird line, or this weird tension between being able to presume competence and celebrate, and then also go, oh, I don't want to offend anybody either, or don't want anybody to feel bad or feel like, oh, you just got to do more therapy. If only you did more therapy, you could do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to give you an example, because this happened to me yesterday, and I was like, I don't know, it really just made my heart feel so good. Well, we took him to the dentist. He's got the palate expander, right? And I have been working so hard with him to get his tongue retracted, because he
Yeah.
still has his tongue out a lot, right? And I do the same thing everybody else does. I'm looking around me and I'm going, all right, here's this kid over here whose tongue I think has never been out. I've followed him on Instagram since like the day he was born. I don't think he's ever had that problem. And this one fixed this problem over here. How come I haven't been able to help Will do that? Are we not doing enough therapy? Am I not doing enough, the right exercises? Am I not? And this, the airway dentist that we had, I brought it up to her because with his palate expander, I have seen the tongue come back some, and I was excited. And I said, but we're not there yet. Like, and I said, we're doing these oral motor exercises. And she said, listen, Will has an open bite, which means he has a hole kind of in his mouth. When he closes his teeth, there's a hole. And she said, so think of like a garage door. Something needs to shut it. And he's using his tongue. She said, and until we fix that open bite, expand his palate, you're asking too much of him.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, there's an actual like reason beyond Cathy, you're just not doing enough therapy, which no one has said to me. It's just something I have
Your
put on
own.
myself, watching other people not struggle with this one little thing. And when he drinks out of a straw, he wraps his tongue around the straw. And we're like, how do we get him to stop doing that? How do we get him? Because I know it'll help him speak if he stops doing it. But it was such a relief for me to go, okay, this is not physiologically possible for him right now, but he'll get there. And he'll get there when he gets there,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't matter who else's kid can drink properly out of a straw
Yeah.
or not have their tongue out. It doesn't matter, because I'm on Team Will, and
Right.
I need to stay like focused on him.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was we really drove it home for me. I'm like, why am I putting so much pressure on myself, when I don't need to be doing that?
Yeah. Well, and I think I forget that it, uh, Amy Julia Becker talks a lot about this, like this acceptance of like of our own limitations, that we live in a society that's like, well, you have to be the greatest at all the things, like you have to be, and we're so far from perfect. Like for those of us who have faith, like that's why we need a creator. Like that's why we worship a creator, because we say we don't have this of our own strength. And so we, yes, we all have gifts and abilities that we've been given, but there are places that I fall so short, like that I have very strong limitations, and I can, no matter how hard I work at those things, that's always going to be a weakness of mine because it's just not a gift. Like I can try,
Right.
but I'm not going to be great on the basketball court. It's just not a
Right.
gift of mine, right? And so there's an acceptance of that. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm not going to try. It just means an acceptance of I have human limitations. And so finding that balance of like limitations are not evil or something to be like resisted, but just to be said, okay, like I feel like that's a perfect example of what your dentist said, or the dental work, like there's something, and it's not that it can't be improved upon, but right now there's that
Right.
limit, right?
Yeah.
And so to try and you could try and try and try till the cows come home, but with that limit, you're just going to be beating your head against the wall because
Yeah.
there's that thing, right? And so I feel like finding that balance of just saying, okay, we don't need to make our children something that they're not. Like we can
No.
accept limitation and also encourage them to be the best version of themselves. They can
Right. And
coexist.
that's why this whole idea of God-given potential is, where we landed, because it's like, everybody who is here on this earth, everybody who's ever created has strengths and
Yeah.
weaknesses and likes and dislikes and temperament, and and then add in medical conditions that you might have, or we all have limitations.
Yeah.
And so we have limitations in the neurotypical world, we have limitations in the disability world. And just because they look a little different doesn't mean that, somebody's greater than another or anything like that. It's just, I like what you said about just accepting, we just have to accept that.
Yeah.
Um, this is the way God made our children.
Yeah.
And that extra chromosome is the most incredible gift ever. I don't need Will to be neurotypical. I don't want him to be. That's not who God created him to be. I do want to find the things that he loves and then explore those things with him and help him succeed where he wants to succeed,
Yeah.
you know? And for every child, that's going to look a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and having almost like a tool belt, like giving the tools for that tool belt that you carry through life. And we all need that. We all need tools for our tool belt to be able to get through life to the best of our ability. And so, just as we would with any child, I want to teach you how to walk. I want to teach you how to talk. I want to teach you how to do these things. But, I had a mom, and I'm sure you've had this too, Cathy, where I had a mom reach out to me and say, I feel like a lot of the stories are told of, the success stories and the stars, but my child doesn't do any of those things, and I don't know if they ever will. And for this reason and that, and it's her story to tell, but she was saying, I don't feel like those stories get told, and I feel like they're just as important, they're just as valuable, and they're just as precious. And it really convicted me because she's right. She's right. If we're standing here and we're saying in this community that our kids have value and they have they need to have a space at the table, we have to say all the kids do, and not just the ones who are beating down expectations, right? Like all of them. And I think that we're perpetuating this this thing that you have to excel to have a seat at the table by only telling those stories, and so I was like, you're right, we need to tell stories like yours. You're right, that should be on the tip of my tongue. Like, I want to tell you this story about this family who this child might never speak. You're right. And this life is valuable and worthy. Like, you're right. And so it's finding that place where we're saying that there is a seat for this child too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because we have this whole champion possibility campaign, right? And we are the idea behind it, and we've fallen behind telling some of the stories, but is that anybody fits into this category of championing possibility. We told the story of sweet little Vaya, who isn't even with us anymore,
Yeah.
and fought every day in the hospital, and no one embodies that phrase of champion possibility to me like more than her. Like she was the definition of what it meant to champion possibility, just as much as, you know, Chris Nickick being an Iron Man. He's
Mhm.
championing possibility, doing that too. Like, so it's like our idea was, let's give whoever wants it a platform to tell that story.
I
What
love it.
does it mean to you to champion possibility? And like, let's celebrate. We want to celebrate with you, whatever the milestone is. Maybe the milestone is that after, 300 days in the NICU, you went home. Your
Yeah.
little guy went home.
Yeah. Huge.
Or, you took your first steps at 4.5, or I don't know, pick
Yeah.
something. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter what the thing is. It's just this idea that we should all be championing one another and celebrating one another. And, I mean, I agree with you. I agree that those stories should be told. And we're, at least for Team Iron Will, we're trying to create space for people to be able to tell those stories in their own words. Um, because again, it looks different for me and you, right? Because of our own family culture. Like,
Mhm.
Will loves the things his brothers love. He loves wiffle ball, he loves trick shots. And so we're helping him succeed in those things.
Yeah.
And for Jed, there's going to be other things that are
Yeah.
part of your family culture
Yeah.
that you're like, oh, this is where Jed is shining
Yeah.
because this is what he sees every day.
Yeah.
And that's where he wants to be. He wants to be like you. He wants to be like Braden. He wants to be like Clay.
Yeah.
And Will wants to be like, his
Yeah.
brothers, his
Sibling.
dad,
Yeah.
me. Like, he's like, oh, you're doing that thing. I want to do that thing.
Yeah.
That's how I got into baking with Will, because I had a baking business in college. Like,
I did
this
not
is,
know
yes,
that.
it's my love. It's like, and so I've shared baking with all my kids, and Will comes along and I'm like,
Oh.
why wouldn't I share this with him? But you know what we had to do? We had to make some modifications. Like, got to get we got the kitchen tower so he can stand at the counter. We got the Montessori little tools so he can, you know, do his own chopping and stuff without hurting
So
himself. And
cool.
so I don't know. I think that's where our kids tend to shine, where they're planted. God put him in
Absolutely.
this family and he's going to shine right here. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Well, and championing just being earthside. I mean, so many of our children, as we've said, just the fact that they are born, at all, when from just being in the womb, like there's so the chance of them making it out, there's such a high percentage of chance that they're
Yeah.
not going to make it. And that's what scared me so much as a mom, being pregnant with Jed. Is just like, oh my gosh, is he going to make it to term? There was just such a fear. And so I thought all the way, like, if you make it, I hate that that was a thought in my head, if you make it, but it was a thought. If you make it, you're such a champion, you're such a warrior. And so all of our kids that are living and breathing on this earth are literal champions. Like,
100%.
they
Yes,
it's amazing. They defy the odds in so many ways, you know?
they do. And you're right. The just making it here. That's where people ask where Will got his nickname Iron Will. It was in the delivery room because same as you, like I spent my entire pregnancy terrified he wasn't going to make it here. And being number 8, he's the first one that I literally bawled like a baby when they placed him in my arms, because the relief of like,
You
okay,
made
he's
it.
breathing. He's, you know,
I know.
he's
Same.
here. He made it. His heart is beating. He's breathing. It's like, yeah, we felt like this is the
Absolutely.
most incredible moment ever, because you are terrified that they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So just by making it here, you're a champion. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. For those who haven't listened to Kathy's first episode in season 1, episode 2, she tells all about that story. I just went back and re-listened to it. You should listen to it again because Team Iron Will has come so far from since then, Kathy. It was so neat to listen back and just see how far it's come. But I hope that we can circle back to these conversations because I mean, we do in private, obviously, but that we
right.
can have these conversations in a public forum, whether it be through our webinars or on the podcast, because it's so important for other moms and dads and family members to know that they aren't alone in having this struggle. I think it's really important for me to say out loud that in that IEP meeting that I was just like, no, he can't. Like that was my instinct. That was my knee jerk. It's important for me to say that because if you and I are so vocal about, yes, they can, and we're advocating, and then that's my knee jerk, like other people need to hear that because there's so much shame that can shroud us, and
Right.
hold us back. And so I want to say that out loud that we all struggle with those things that we don't even know exist within us, like that ableism, that bias that we don't even know that's there, that we're like, ugh, like I gotta shred myself of this. Like I
Right.
feel
You're
like
like,
I'm
where did that
constant,
come from? Yeah.
yeah, like taking off layers. It's just
Yeah.
it's icky, but it's a
But
fact.
it's part of us being human too, right? And so we have to give ourselves grace in those moments, because it is years and years and decades of people pouring these lies into our heads about people with Down syndrome or people with other disabilities. And like it or not, those things are in there,
Yeah,
and they pop their ugly little head out at the most inopportune times. But I think it's beautiful that you can recognize it, right? You
yeah,
recognize what you were doing, and you're like, oh no, I'm gonna grow right here in real time
yep,
because
yep,
they're
yep.
right. And I am the one holding him back. I mean, Andrew and I have had that conversation so many times. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, are we holding him back here?
Mm,
And it's a gut punch, right?
yeah,
Because we're out here saying, no, presume
I
competence. I'm like, um, I don't know that we're presuming competence in this moment. But you can self-correct, right? And so,
absolutely. The awareness is key. And to your point, we are so, in so many ways, products of our environment, not just in the families we grew up in, but in the culture that we grew up in. And when you go back and you look at shows that were out when we were kids and teenagers, and depending on in almost every generation, but particularly like in the early 2000s and late 90s, it was like very trendy to use the R word in
yeah,
sitcoms, making fun of people. And I think to myself, I grew up in that. Like I grew up
yeah,
watching these shows and hearing comedians making fun of what was to be my child. Like
yeah,
that was normal back then. And so no wonder I have it entrenched in me that I have to shed, and I'm not excusing it, but no wonder I have
right.
that in me because it was a part of our culture. And so, like
It
you said,
was.
just that awareness, you
It
know,
it it yeah, it was. I mean, I used that word
same
growing up. We
in high
all
school. Yeah.
did. And I'll never forget the moment I stopped using it, because I called my brother that word in front of a family that was visiting my family, and they had a son with Down syndrome. And the look on his face and his mother's face, and I was only like, I want to say I was maybe 14, 15. Um, the look on her face, nobody said a word, nobody corrected me. It was just the look, like it's burned into my memory
Yeah.
how much I hurt them by
Yeah.
using that word. And that's when I stopped. That's when I stopped
Yeah.
doing it. And I'm thankful now. I look back and I go, I'm thankful I had that experience very young because I didn't really have a lot of people with Down syndrome or any disability in my life. I mean, I had never even met this family before. So it's like when you don't grow up around people like that, you don't even think. You think, oh, it's just a word. I'm
Right.
not hurting anybody. But then when you see the pain
Oh,
that is caused, it's like, no. And so, yeah, I'm now thankful for that experience because I can say, like, yeah, I cut that out,
yes.
cut that
Well,
out pretty young and never brought it back. And now that I have Will, it's like, it's personal, you know,
yes.
it
Yes.
hurts my heart deeply when I hear that word,
Yes. Well,
you
when you
know.
know better, you do better. And it's just that acknowledgement of just like, hey, I can't go back and erase the past, but I can do better moving forward. And I can acknowledge, okay, I had these preconceived notions and I want to like do better. Like I
Yeah.
want to work on my heart and my innards, right? And so I think we can all do that. And I think there are so many areas that we can work on, and that's a part of the beauty of having a friendship like ours, Kathy, is that we can sit and sort of hold a mirror up, not in judgment, but just kind of be like, yeah, like this was not my finest moment, but I can talk to you about this and you can kind of relate to some degree, and we
Yeah.
can, talk through this. And so I hope for those listening or watching that if maybe you had a moment like I did in that IEP meeting, or maybe there's something in this conversation that you're like, oh, I don't feel quite as alone. I don't feel quite as icky because I know other moms, other dads, other people in this community have felt similarly in this kind of scenario, because we are not alone. And the
No.
worst thing we can do is feel shame and feel like we're the only ones. That's the biggest lie. Like there is not a thought that you have had that nobody else has had. Like you are not alone on an island,
Right.
and that's never ever think that.
Yeah. No, you're so right. And I was thinking while you were talking about what used to bother me a lot, and I think it did you too, because I think we talked about it, were those milestone charts, especially when
Yes.
you have a little one and you go to the doctor and they're like, no, no, no,
Wait.
no,
Yes.
no. And you leave and you're crying and you're like, and they're using the typical chart, which is ridiculous anyway. But I'll never forget one of my early therapists said to me, because we were talking about charts, and she's like, I'm going to give you a chart. And she took all the ages off of it. There were no ages. It was simply, they weren't even milestones. They were like inch stones on their way to milestones. And she said, all I want you to focus on is the next thing on this list,
Mm.
and I'm thankful for her and thankful for that because when you take those ages off, well, then you can just zone in and focus on, okay, what do we need to work on next?
Yes.
As opposed to why are we're behind in everything? Like,
Yes.
because it is a defeating feeling. And so if you're watching this or listening, that you're not alone. We have felt all of those things. And Misty and I don't want anybody to feel alone, right? And you can always reach out and talk. We'll always listen.
Yes.
Uh,
Please
because
do.
yeah,
And this too shall pass. If you're in a struggling place, this too shall pass. And if you're in a place of victory, this too shall pass. It's like the highs and the lows go like this on this
it
journey. And
is. Yeah. Yeah.
it's quite a ride, but we're in it together and we're here for you. And I'm so thankful for this conversation, Kathy. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Thanks
Hey.
for joining me.
All right. Bye, Misty.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Bold Voices, Soft Hearts. We hope you'll share this episode with a friend, leave a review, and keep using your voice to spread light in the world. Bold Voices, Soft Hearts.